Yeah.
Does anyone have a tool that doesn't exist, at least of what they know of, that they wish existed? Like for me, it's I don't know if it's possible, but to like make a 360 alpha type of thing, and then you can basically make a 3D model of like it'd be like a mold. So like you press it into like a cube, and then it makes like it probably already exists, but it makes like the 3D model. So, but it'd be like a 360 view. So if you wanted to make a person, I don't know if this is making any sense.
But here's the thing: like, if you could
kinda
model the mold, haven't you effectively already modeled the thing you're trying to? This probably isn't making sense, but if you're modeling the complement, everything except the thing, you've modeled the thing already.
Yeah.
No, mine is right along those lines as well. It's a mesh brush like they have in ZBrush, where you add mesh, and it's like you already have the mesh that's made, and you can put it on the normals of whatever you're working on.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't KitOps have like cutters, custom cutters and things that you can like push into stuff and it'll imprint a 3D, like a really complex Boolean?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think they used to be called. They used to be part of HardOps, I think. Inserts, and then I'm not sure if they removed it, and then KitOps took over that like branch of things. But yeah, they're quite cool. It's exactly as you say. It's basically just like a really advanced Boolean type thing. So there's probably something that could be done there.
It's already been invented. There goes my idea.
I think almost everything.
Almost
everything's been thought of. Like, yeah. I was like, oh, cool. Somebody should write a muscle system for Blender, and then like, of course, I'm on Blender Market, and like there it is. I'm like, oh, that exists already. Cool. I don't know. And then I'm like, all right, cool. I can buy it and use it because deformations just don't look right without muscles underneath.
I did have an idea, and I remember telling CG, I was like, okay, so what if you have a general rule set of artwork for like what should happen at certain angles and stuff, and like how objects connect, and basically you just put down primitives, and then it reads from that rule set, and then it generates something. So say if you wanted to build like a complex sci-fi building, you basically put cube, and then it would read from the data set that some other artist has made, and then it'll make a complex building from it. Someone did it. Like the next day or two, it was like some Houdini and Unreal like combo thing, and it was exactly that. They put down cubes and it generated this thing, and I was like, oh, you know what? Might as well give up.
Yeah, Houdini is like the biggest plugin for Blender, or vice versa. But it really like it allows you to do all that stuff and just pretty quickly. But yeah, the generative stuff, like you would get lost in it because it's just you said it yourself. You're like, I'm not going to pick up Houdini because I'll get addicted to it. You probably, like, based on everything that I've seen, all the work that you do, you probably would.
That's the thing. I want to learn how to do all of this stuff manually so I understand it. And I feel like having such a powerful node graph would just, maybe I'll take it for granted. I mean, the results would be cool, but it wouldn't, like, I don't know if it would be challenging enough, if that makes sense. I don't know. I've still got so much to learn with Python and Blender anyway.
I've been seeing a lot of like Houdini Blender crossovers recently. There's like Houdini nodes for Blender, and there's like an in-between thing where you can use like a bridge for Blender and Houdini to work together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have to pay for the full Houdini because that's like $4,500, but
well, Houdini has these like digital assets things. I think it's the same thing just for Blender.
Yeah, it's I don't know if anybody has if Side Effects has done Houdini Engine for Blender, but they should, and they probably will, as Blender's getting huge, and it's, I mean, the render engines in Blender are awesome. Eevee and Cycles are both phenomenal, and I think having Houdini Engine inside Blender would be really, really cool. I'm definitely going to start doing some Houdini crossover stuff because I'm doing Houdini at work all the time anyway. So I'm like, why not just? And I kind of want to prove to like the people I work with that we should definitely bring in Blender more, because Eevee is an awesome, fast real-time renderer. And like, it's not great for everything, but like it's for a lot of the stuff we end up doing, it's awesome. So, and it's fast. So it's either that or we buy Redshift. And well, I don't know if I'm getting any more money this year because 2020 is so much fun. So I think I'll probably start doing a lot more. I'll probably start doing some videos on that.
Yeah, I want to start making like crossovers between ZBrush and Blender, integrating the two.
Yeah.
Okay, you asked biggest missing feature. I have it, UV advection. What is UV advection? It's the thing that lets you have a UV map for a fluid, a mesh that's always changing. How do you have a UV map for it? The way you do it is you do a particle system, and little UV fragments are attached to these particles, and there's some math that goes into it. But every time I try to do lava, I can't do it because I can't have the rock flowing with the fluid because you have to use generated coordinates, and these things update as the bounding box changes. Houdini has UV advection. And there's a add-on the molecular script and then Cube Surfer together have UV advection, but it's missing generally.
If you write that out in Alembic and then bring it in, and then render it in Blender. But if you want to do it in Blender, if you want to,
can Alembic have like changing UVs?
That's a good question. I would have to look that up. I think it does, but don't quote me on it.
One thing that gets me excited about like this talk about all these tools and stuff with Blender is like abstraction, which is something I talk about a lot in my coding videos. Because if someone else makes an add-on, we'll take like Sverchok for example, it's not like you just need to use Sverchok as it is and that extends Blender's functionality to a certain amount. If you have an understanding of like how to script, how to make the add-ons for Blender and stuff, Sverchok becomes like another tool set for you when you're coding, because that's got a whole collection of its own procedures, operators, etc., and the node graph as well, which you can interact with and build with your own code as well. So say you have that installed and the person that's receiving your tool has that installed, that gives you like a whole new level of stuff to play with inside of Blender. So seeing like all these new like add-ons and developments is quite exciting, because it means like the number of things that you can now make within a short amount of time with your pre-existing Python skills has now increased without you doing anything necessarily. So yeah,
something like in that train of thought, I was reading a paper on creating non-linear facades, building facades.
Oh yeah.
And this guy was using Sverchok, and he had done a custom node for bubble packing, which is like fitting certain sized things, the maximum capacity of them on a surface without any gaps. But yeah, he'd just written his own node. He was just like, yeah, this is how we do it now. And that was how he was able to visualize it in Blender, like really quickly. So it's like a really great environment and platform for him to use to create and show people his theory.
I like the idea of writing nodes for Sverchok. In fact, I don't know if anyone knows Mark Kingsnorth, but he's got like some spaceship generator stuff and a nebula generator as well, and curves to mesh add-on and some other stuff. He's pretty good, and he's doing a toolkit I think at London Blender Day, because they can't host the physical event, or doing a live stream soon where they're gonna have a bunch of people talking, and he's one of them. Anyway, I was seeing that he was making nodes for animation nodes. I was thinking, that's actually quite a cool idea, because he can plug his generator scripts just straight into it and use it alongside all the other features. However, as we've said on the podcast before, I'm not that fond on using animation nodes anymore. Not because it's a bad thing, but just because it's quite heavyweight. There's a lot of troubleshooting if I wanted to show it to other people as well. But Sverchok is like, it's lightweight, it seems easy to install, quite nice to play with.
They've got new Boolean tools.
Yes, it seems quite tightly integrated into the modify system as well, which I like. So yeah, looking forward to it. After I've got some personal things out the way, like in the next week or two, then I'll probably start playing with it.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where you can if you know Python, or you pick up Sverchok and stuff, you can start doing so much stuff just nodal based and procedural based inside Houdini, inside Blender, and it's the power is increasing tenfold with every new edition of these add-ons and things that are just opening it up. And I think like the one biggest thing I would love to see in Blender, and I'm not sure, and you can talk to this on the program side, is how multi-threaded or hyper-threaded is Blender.
Right. Well, Blender's interesting because it's mostly on the CPU, and actually it depends what you're looking at, because rendering processes are a completely different thing from like the processes required to set up the shaders as well as things like, you know, modifiers and geometry, which is all CPU based as well, because most of Blender isn't able to run on the GPU. So I don't know. It really depends on what like element of the software you're looking at.
Yeah, because for something like Sims, where a program like Houdini really shines, is that it just the memory management and the threading capability for running those Sims, it's all hyper threaded. So you know, you can get a language like Vex, which is, you know, multi-threaded, and just as many cores. I mean, your ability to just create depends on how many cores your system has. So the more cores you have, the better the software runs. And Blender seems to choke when it hits a certain amount of simulation data, a certain amount. So it's like there seems to be a ceiling right now, and that could break in any release. Of course, they can, you know, change the code and write it in a way that's takes advantage of multiple CPUs. But I feel that Blender, like when you start pushing a whole lot of stuff out, it just freezes and chokes. And it depends on your system as well. But I've run it on really powerful systems, and it still, I think it still has a way to go as far as taking advantage of the CPUs and freeing up memory so that you can do like massive simulation type work with it.
Unfortunately, I don't really know too much.
And you know,
I don't know too much about how Blender actually manages simulations behind the scenes. Whether any of it is able to be passed on to the GPU, for example, I'm not sure.
Because that would be a place where Blender should probably, you know, really be going, is that direction where it just, you know, takes advantage and leverages everything you have in your computer.
Yeah.
And then you can just do massive, you know, memory management is crucial, and throughput.
Yeah, I need to look up actually how MantaFlow works, because I have a complete lack of knowledge on that as well.
Because Flip Fluids looks really, really nice inside of Blender.
Yeah.
And I've used it inside Houdini for a number of things, and it's really, really efficient, and it's really good. But the engine is different inside Blender than you know, Houdini. So it would be cool to see Blender going in that direction, especially with all the procedural stuff.
Definitely.
Because with Flip Fluids, you can select the amount of cores you want to use for the CPU. I've been finding that when I've been running simulations, it only pretty much hits one of my CPUs. It doesn't go across everything, and I think that's what we're talking about clearly.
It is, yeah.
My work machine's like dual 22 core to server. And I'm, you know, if I could run simulations on that, but I can't.
Yeah,
it's too slow.
You know, it's funny.
Yeah, that's it.
There's someone on my Discord server who's just got like a very powerful personal computer. They've got like an RTX 2080 Ti, but they've got like one of these super expensive i9 type CPUs and stuff. I'm like they're not doing anything rendering wise. It's mostly for music stuff, but it's quite funny because if you're doing rendering, sometimes having both the CPU and the GPU active at the same time can slow down your rendering times. All right, because when it manages the tiles, from what I know, and this could be wrong, but a tile is only managed by either the GPU or the CPU, but not both. I don't know if you've ever seen it where like your render is pretty much finished, but there's one tile left, and it's taken ages, and it's hiking, and that's because you've got the CPU active as well. That's why I turn off the CPU like whenever I can and just have the GPU, so that last tile gets the GPU and it's all done really quickly. So like for me, I just went for an i5 9600K, which isn't like the most powerful thing, but it's good enough because the entire job for my CPU is just to pass objectives to the GPU when it comes to rendering for me. So that's what this has been designed for. I just think it's interesting because I think it's, as you say, good for people to have the options of how they want to process things rather than just restricting them. Because I mean, the way that like Nvidia is growing and going with their cards is kind of crazy, especially with all these optimizations for like real-time path tracing, RTX and stuff like that. Even with the AI enabled stuff, it's like, why would you ever just do it on the CPU now if you have the option?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you can, on a GPU, you can throw, hundreds of cores at the solution and render, and it just converges, and you get, beautiful, fast renders, and it's definitely revolutionizing everything. But the Blender code, I just wonder at what point do they need to do a complete core, cleaning house and rewrite to open it up to multi-cores or not, because I haven't gone into the actual code and gained an understanding of what it's doing at the graph level. But it's having used other software and realizing that the Blender is in the camp with like most of the software out there. The only other software that's like really really efficient at this stuff, doing massive simulations, is Houdini, and they kind of build themselves at that.
Yeah.
But it would be really cool, and I see Blender moving in that direction. So that's why I was asking that question, on the programmatic side, like how it's handling data under the hood, because it really does make a difference.
Yeah, and it's hard to say exactly how easy it would be for them to make like large sweeping changes to how processes are managed and handled on the lower level. Because on the surface, Blender looks very modular, especially like if you're using it with Python and then C, like converting those into C. Python looks modular because everything is easy to access, all the different windows, it's all context based, and it looks cool from that perspective. But when you get lowered down, it might be very messy. I've never looked at the raw Blender code before. It might be very difficult to make large changes to. But I don't know. I think they've got some good standards in the Blender Foundation, and just how they manage it all. Because I think I remember listening to them talking about if you want to work for Blender, you need to have a certain understanding of how to read other people's codes. I think they have conventions of how you lay things out. So I think they've got it designed in a pretty good way going forward.
Blender does a really good job of being optimized. I mean, if you look at the size of Blender when you download it, it's like 150 meg.
Yeah,
it's tiny. And then you download like Houdini or Maya, and it's like, why am I downloading 8 gig? What am I doing?
Yeah, Maya is a beast. It's a beast. I think since Autodesk bought them, they've gotten even more bloat in there. But I digress. I mean, I love Maya. I used it solid every day for 10 years. I love it. But yeah.
I think
I'll speak no more about that.
Yeah, I think that 2.8, actually speaking about the internal structure of Blender, I think 2.8 allowed them to make some major future-proofing changes to like to the core of Blender. Because I think to come up with like all the interface and all the functionality changes that they wanted to do during the code quest, they had to go and rewrite, well, not necessarily rewrite, but restructure like a ton of stuff, especially for they gave it a name, not just the outliner, but they had a specific name for how data was formatted in the files or managed, but I can't remember what they used to describe it as. Now I wish I remembered. But they said like it's not something you'll ever see, but it's something super important for behind the scenes, for like scene management, asset management, and stuff like that. But, yeah.
That would be cool. And another thing too that comes from Maya that I really loved in Maya is their connection editor. And it's really awesome where you can take, and you can do it in Houdini as well, but you can take like any parameter and connect it up to almost any other parameter. And you can do it like really, really, really fast. So like if you want to open up like set-driven keys or drivers in Blender, it's still a little convoluted compared to like Maya, where you just open up a connection editor and it lists like everything on one side and then everything on the other, and it's just like playing a matching game. So you can like take the rotation of one thing and like instantly match it to the scale of something else, and just have like these cool like networks going. And Cinema 4D might do it as well, but I have never used it, so I don't know. I've seen videos on it, but I've never used it. But it would be really cool in Blender to like be able to, and you can do that. Like, I mean, Sphere Chalk and animation nodes, but they take that separate add-on. But it would be cool to just have that functionality where you can just like link anything to anything. Or like in Houdini, you can say like you can say like copy parameter on one thing, and then you just go to like something completely different in the software and go like paste copied relative references, and then you have a link that like links any data in the program to anything. So you can make anything do anything.
Yeah,
that's really powerful. It's like any data can access any other data, and as an artist, it's like, well, anything I want to do here can access anything I want to do over there.
It's very, very fluid. And
fluid, yeah.
I remember the term the dependency graph. That's what they called it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very important internal system. So
yeah. Maya, when they rewrote their dependency graph, they had or when they came out, I remember when they went from like Power Animator to Maya, they had this whole like write up on their dependency graph ethos, and it was pretty cool to see.